Hello YouTube, Dave here again. So for anyone who's watched this channel for a while, or anyone who knows me, knows that one of my all-time favorite monsters in the Dungeons & Dragons game has to be the Beholder. It's just something that, I don't know exactly what it is, it's just such an awesome monster in my opinion. I love the way it looks, especially the more modern renditions of it. And yeah, it's just something that has always kind of sparked my imagination. I remember sitting down and reading the Beholder kin entries in the 2nd edition Monstrous Manual, and just thinking that was such an interesting creature that I wanted to sort of learn more about it. I have actually had the opportunity to run a couple of encounters with Beholders over the course of some of the various editions of D&D. Not as many as I would like, but I ran a Beholder for 3rd edition, 3.5, and I've run a few Beholder encounters for 5th edition. And the 5th edition Beholder is the one that I kind of want to talk about here today. I've had some people comment in the past about some issues that they have with the 5th edition Beholder, and one person in particular had some questions about how I would deal with certain situations. So basically the way that it sort of works out is in 5th edition, a Beholder uses their eye rays completely and totally at random. So, and if you're watching this, I assume that you have a 5th edition Monstrous Manual. I'm not really going to go, or Monster Manual, I'm not really going to go through and flip through the books, but basically on each of their turns they get, I think it's 3 rays that they can use, but you roll them randomly, and you disregard like repeated results. And they also have 3 legendary actions, so after someone else's turn, they can use another one of their eye rays again at random. And that was something that, at first was like, okay, well that's kind of interesting, but the more I played encounters, or ran encounters I should say, with the Beholder in 5th edition, the more I really started to dislike the roll randomly. Basically because it led to some situations where the Beholder would target something with an eye ray that would be totally ineffective against it. For example, I almost always seem to randomly roll the sleep ray against an elven character which is immune to magical sleep. So it was just basically a wasted turn. Trying to get a paladin with a fear effect is again something that could be sort of counterproductive. So anyway, that alone got me thinking about ways that I would want to sort of change or house rule the 5th edition Beholder. But then I had someone else talk about some encounters that they had with Beholder where they would use something like Obscuring Mist. And the reason that Obscuring Mist basically rendered the Beholder pretty much ineffective was because it obscured, it concealed anyone that was inside of it, so they no longer had line of sight, and that made things very difficult because the Beholder's eye rays, they just basically are assumed to, if the Beholder has line of sight, it automatically affects the target, and they have to make a saving throw to either suffer the effects or in most cases completely negate them. And having read his comment, and he made it more than once in a couple of, or there was a little bit of a thread going on there about how frustrating it was to have this, powerful creature rendered, almost obsolete and, reduced to nothing but its bite attacks because of something as simple as Obscuring Mist and how I would deal with it. And at first I thought the way that I would deal with it was simply allow the Beholder to make a perception check in order to see if it can locate one of the creatures within. And I think that would work overall, but it still wasn't really all that satisfying. I mean, it's one of those things that when the DM runs a 5th edition Beholder, I don't get to do a lot, honestly, with it. In general, the most that I get to do is, roll randomly for the eye ray. But that's something that I honestly, would get the players to do and let them sort of be like the architects of their own, downfall or fate or whatever, when it came to the Beholder rays. But there's just not much that you do as the DM running this Beholder. Like, you roll randomly to determine, in terms of like tactics, you roll randomly to determine which eye rays hit, and then the players make a saving throw, and that's it. Like that's pretty much all that you can do. And it just isn't as satisfying for me. And so one of the things that I liked about Beholders in previous editions, and I'm looking at the D20 versions because these are ones that I'm more familiar with in terms of having actually had some experience with in terms of running encounters. I like the way that beholders were handled a bit more in, say, 3rd edition and 4th edition. Because in those editions of the game, and basically I will flip to the beholder. Let's actually flip to the 4th edition one, because it's more in line with what I actually want to do with my 5th edition beholder. So let's just get to it here. Too far. Alright, so here we have the 4th edition beholder. So, one of the things that I really like about the beholder here is that, and this is sort of the design philosophy that I've come up with for the House Rule beholder that I want to create. In fact, I actually did go through and create the stat block already, and for anyone who is following me on Patreon, you have access to that already, so you can see the completed stat block. I'm not going to, show it here in this video because I'm basically going to explain, my decisions and how they go. But if you want to see the actual completed block, then you can go over to my Patreon, and if you're supporting it, then you have access to it. And I will eventually make that a public post, probably within a couple of days of this video going up, I would imagine. But anyway, so we have the beholder here, and essentially one of the things that I like about it is it gets 2 different eye rays that it can use during its regular turn. However, you get to choose which ones they are. It does give you the numbers if you wanted to roll randomly, but you still get to choose. And the reason that it's numbered randomly is that if an enemy starts within 30 or 25 feet of the beholder at the start of their turn, then the beholder targets them with a random eye ray. And that, to me, I'm okay with the randomness in this particular situation because it's more of a reactionary sort of thing. It's not where the beholder is actually thinking about what it's doing. It just, uses an eye ray at random because it's there sort of thing. It's close enough, and the beholder is sort of like just a reflex defense mechanism. But on their regular turn, they get to choose which eye ray that they activate, which ones they target, and who they target with it. So, again, it allows the beholder to be more tactical. And they're always presented as intelligent creatures, well beyond the average intelligence of most of the, humanoid races. So the fact that they're considered to be so intelligent, and even in 4th edition, or 5th edition I should say, they still have a pretty good intelligence, and yet they're doing everything at random, which leads to just some bad situations. So one of the first things that I wanted to get rid of was the randomness of their regular turn eye rays, because it just, again, it doesn't seem like it's an intelligent creature. It just seems like it's this, mindless brute just throwing these various eye rays at their targets. So the ability to choose was the first thing that I, basically changed when it came to the beholder. However, the issue of things like the obscuring mist and the fact that, if the beholder doesn't have, line of sight to the target, then they're effectively unable to use their eye rays. And there's not much of a workaround for that other than, like, so the perception check, something they could do. But I also miss the fact that in the other D20 versions of D&D specifically, the beholder still had to make an attack roll with their eye ray. Like, the eye ray had to physically hit. And, you see, like, videos of like a beholder encounter, like there was one in the Scourge of Worlds Choose Your Own Adventure DVD where like the beholder's shooting its eye rays, but you have people dodging it. And I know that's what saving throws are meant to sort of elicit. That's sort of that idea. But I just sort of like the idea of the beholder being able to needing to hit with the eye ray. And so I wanted to bring that back. I wanted to, as a dungeon master, when I'm running an encounter with my favorite monster, I want to feel like I'm in a little bit more control of what happens than just, what we have here. So I brought back the eye ray attack rolls for the beholder monster. So I just think it works better that way. It makes me, it's something that is more geared towards how I want to run a Beholder encounter. It's not going to obviously work for everyone, but I just miss that having to roll with the Beholder, because it gives me more to do when I'm running my favorite monster, as opposed to having basically everybody else make all the die rolls. You know, I mean, I still get to roll the damage, which can be okay, I guess, but I like the idea of making attack rolls with the Beholder, and then you can also impose advantage or disadvantage. So if there's an obscuring mist, instead of the Beholder being effectively rendered, you know, useless, he could still make his attack rolls at a disadvantage, and you know, the same way that anybody else making an attack roll in Obscuring Mist would do so at disadvantage. So I like that idea, and I think it solves a lot of the issues with the way that the Beholder is handled in 5th edition. So the way to determine how they get their attack rolls, I looked back, and in the 3rd edition version of the Beholder, their eye rays were basically the equivalent of sorcerer spells, and their DC and everything was based off of them, you know, casting spells as a sorcerer. So I thought I would do the same thing here, and determining their proficiency bonus is actually pretty, well, that was convenient. Determining the proficiency bonus was actually really easy, because if you look at their bites, they get a +5 bonus to hit. And it's just a straight 4d6 piercing damage, because their strength is 10, which gives them no bonus whatsoever. So that obviously made it easy to determine that the proficiency bonus is +5. Now when it comes to them, you know, casting spells or acting like a sorcerer, I gave them their bonuses based off of having a charisma of 17, or using the charisma for it, which works as well in their when it comes to their saving throw DCs, because they have a DC of 16, you have 8 plus 5 is 13, plus 3 is 16. So again, I use their charisma for their innately generated abilities. So their eye rays have a magical attack bonus of +8, and the DCs stay the same. So we have that there. Now, when it comes to many of their damaging effects in 5th edition, they are essentially like, you know, all or nothing type of spells, or eye rays. You either take full damage, or you take no damage. And there is like one exception to that, where they take half, but I kind of like the idea that if I'm rolling with the Beholder now, making attack rolls to hit, there should be some damage that gets dealt, even if the character makes their saving throw against a much worse effect. So, for example, the eye ray could graze them instead of hitting them full on, sort of idea. So the main damage-dealing ones that I had to really look at were the Disintegrate Ray and the Death Ray, because the Disintegrate Ray, if it hits, it does 10d8, I think is what the damage is in here. So I kept that. However, they take half as much damage if they make their saving throw. The same thing was for their Death Ray. Let's see if I can actually get back to the Beholder, because I want to look a little bit closer at that now. Yeah, so Disintegrate Ray, it takes 10d8 and 10d10 on the Death Ray, and in both cases the target is outright killed if they are reduced to 0 hit points. They also have an Enervation Ray, which also deals damage, and the Enervation Ray does 8d8 damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. So we already have one eye ray that establishes that you can do half damage even on a successful save, and the fact that I'm requiring attack rolls now makes that a little bit more fair, I guess, in terms of how that works. So I did the same thing with the Disintegrate Ray and the Death Ray. However, there is still the issue of the Disintegrate Ray and the Death Ray reducing or killing the target outright if it reduces them to 0 hit points. So taking the equivalent of 5d8 or 5d10 can still make the possibility of reducing them to 0, even on a successful saving throw, kind of a reality. So because they made a saving throw, the way that I decided it was that they would just take the damage that's dealt by it. So I think it's like necrotic damage for the Death Ray, and it's force damage for Disintegrate. And if they make their save, they're only killed outright if they fail their save and are reduced to 0. So if they get hit with the I-Ray and they make their saving throw against like Disintegrate or Death Ray, they still take the damage, but they don't get killed outright if they are reduced to 0 on a successful save. They just sort of take the damage. So that's just sort of the way that I decided to do that. And again, if you want to see the stats itself, if you're one of my patron supporters, you can already do so, and in a few days' time I will probably make the stats more publicly available. But the basic things to take away from it is I removed the random I-Rays on the Beholder's turn. So using the legendary action, I decided to leave that randomly determined because, again, it's sort of a reactionary thing that's almost like muscle memory or instinct rather than actual legitimate tactics. And I think that's okay. I'm totally okay with that. On the Beholder's turn, I want an intelligent creature to target their I-Rays intelligently. It doesn't make sense for them to target an elf with sleep because they know that elves are immune to magical sleep, so they would never do it. However, it always seems to happen with the random rolls. The other thing that I wanted to do is get a bit more control, I guess, as a dungeon master when it comes to running this monster. So I brought back the attack rolls for like the I-Rays needing to hit, and then triggering the saving throw for their effects. The bonus to hit is their proficiency bonus, which is +5, and their charisma bonus, which is +3, so giving it a +8. And of course, you could always modify the stats a little bit to change that. And then finally, just having some of their damaging I-Rays still do something, even if the target makes a successful saving throw, because we are now requiring an attack roll to hit. And in 4th edition, Beholder's I-Ray always did damage on a successful hit, and then they typically had ongoing effects that the target could make saving throws to try to negate or try to end the effect that's on them. But if the I-Ray hits, the person always took some form of damage, and I think that was the way to go there. And for the I-Rays that have the ability to kill outright, you just basically don't have a kill outright if the target makes their save. So anyway, that's just sort of like some house rules that I have for Beholders in my D&D 5th edition game. But let me know in the comments below, do you guys have any suggestions for or ideas of how you would house rule your Beholders, changes that you would want to make to your monsters? And let me know. And if there's any other monsters in the 5th edition monster manual that you would want to maybe think of ways to house rule or make up some changes for, give me some suggestions and I'll see what I can do for that in the very near future. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Take care.